Morizes is the only ever-present venue in the FIM Flattrack Cup at the third staging in 2016, and it's the decider here in France. The Czech round and the Italian round have set up a grandstand climax here today between Francesco Cecchini and Emanuele Marzotto. So the reigning world number one Cecchini leading the way, tied with Marzotto on 56 points. A separate battle then seemingly over the final step on the podium between Frank Serra and Wilfried de Lestre, who sit on 41 points apiece, and Michael Dijkstra, who sits just a point behind them on 40. A bit of a gap then to the remaining riders in the standings, but with 30 points up for grabs here tonight, well, plenty could change and the permutations will be endless as we get down towards the final. 8 heat races will decide the 12 finalists here today, so 2 riders will be knocked out and the rest, of course, will be battling to determine their position on the grid for that grand final. There'll be 3 rows of riders in the final, so finishing as high as possible in the point standings will guarantee the best possible grid slot for that grand final. Getting underway with the opening race of the day then, and we're settling in to watch Francesco Cecchini try to come from the back row, although at the moment he's slotted himself in off the front row. He is due to feature off the back row alongside Adrian Garin of Spain, and Wilfried de Lestre, who I was talking about just moments ago in his battle for third on the 2016 podium, goes off the inside start position here. Frank Serra already lined up alongside him. Damien Beaumet of France off gate 3. It's Massimiliano Andreotti of Italy who goes off gate 4. And once we have settled things down correctly, Julien Coffinier of France will go off the outside of that front row, and then the back row will be comprised of Francesco Cecchini and Adrian Garin. Garin, who had a good round last time out in Italy. A few of the riders in the lower order of the field picking up better points in the Italian round than they had in the Czech opening event, and that's closed the pack up somewhat coming into this third and deciding round here in Morizes. Finally, the start marshal settling Francesco Cecchini in off the back row. And then we'll be just about ready to go as we try and slot ourselves into the relevant starting positions. A reminder then, we've got 3 French representatives off the front row, and then we've got Italians and Spaniards mixed in around them, and the only other nationality represented here today is the Netherlands, and Michael Dijkstra will feature next time out in Heat 2. Each of the riders then appearing 4 times on track as they amass enough points to try and make it through to the final. Good start off the pole from Wilfried de Lestre, who shuffles up the pack around turns 1 and 2. Cecchini, the reigning champion, already starting to work his way through the field. He's up to 4th position, now diving for the inside, down into 3rd. Moves the number 8 of Frank Serra wide around the top turn, but he's going to keep it wound on and in fact pick off Wilfried de Lestre to lead at the end of the opening lap. So it's Serra in front, de Lestre in 2nd place. Cecchini's worked his way through from the back row and up into 3rd. We've got a battle here for 4th position. So Garin trying to work his way through from the back as well. He's tried to follow in the tyre tracks of Francesco Cecchini, who's already up into 3rd and now starting to challenge for 2nd position as well. Up to the inside, coming off the pit turn and through fairly easily in the end there, as meanwhile further back down the order, Adrian Garin has now made that move on Damien Beaumet. A couple of French wildcards in the lineup here today, Julien Coffinier and Anthony Caldo. Coffinier down the order in this one, as we see the battle reignited for top spot. Frank Serra it is, who's led since the early stages, but Cecchini's alongside him. Back down into turns 1 and 2. Serra will try to keep it on all the way around the outside, not quite level, and Cecchini claims top spot. Well, off the back row, it was always going to be harder work than if he'd been off a front row grid slot and he could make the start and blast away. But he was very quickly through into 4th position, down into turn 1, carved his way through up into 3rd position just a bend later, and it wasn't too long before he hit the front. 6-lap races, of course, in the heat stages, so plenty of time for the riders to find their way through traffic, and that's exactly what Francesco Cecchini has done in this opening race of the day. No championship points scored during the heat stages. It's all about determining your position on the grid for the final, and it's going to get off to the best possible start for Francesco Cecchini of Italy, who leads the way here with a sizable margin now over Frank Serra in 2nd place. 3rd looks set to go with Wilfried de Lestre. Now, bearing in mind that de Lestre and Serra are battling in the championship for 3rd overall, that could be crucial in the latter stages of this event. But it's Cecchini who takes it then, 2nd over the line to Frank Serra. Wilfried de Lestre gets the better of Adrian Garin, and Massimiliano Andreotti and Damien Beaumet complete the scorers in the opening race of the day, with Julien Coffinier out at the back. Good race victory then, and well celebrated as well by Francesco Cecchini of Italy. He didn't have it all his own way, and that one the reigning champion had to carve his way through the traffic, and already once a winner here in Morizes. He gets off to the best possible start of his defence here in 2016 in Morizes, as he bids for a third consecutive success in the FIM Flattrack Cup. It's Francesco Cecchini race of the day, ahead of Frank Serra in second for 5 race points. Wilfried de Lestre picking up for the French representative. Adrien Garin, 3 race points for him. He was battling hard and had to make a couple of overtaking manoeuvres there to get up to a 3 points paying position. Massimiliano Andriotti picking up 2, and Damien Beaumet, the last of the scorers. He collects that single point. So reigning champion and joint championship leader Francesco Cecchini gets off to the best possible start with a victory in Heat 1. Now it's over to his main championship rival, the number 48 Emanuele Marzotto, to see if he can match him in Heat 2. Both Cecchini and Marzotto with a back row grid slot in their opening race, so it really does give us an indication of the comparison between the two before they even meet later in the heat programme. 4 rides in each rider's case before we get to the final itself, and that does mean that the riders are all aiming for a front row grid slot for the final. The heat's only deciding the starting position for the final rather than championship points, so as it stands it's Cecchini and Marzotto who sit tie down in front on 56. We've seen Frank Serra and Wilfried de Lestre first time out. Michael Dijkstra, their main rival for the bronze medal, goes off the inside of the front row. He's made a decent start, but not quite such a strong start as Gianluca Galletti, who takes the whole shot. So it's Galletti in front. Watch for Marzotto bursting around the outside, coming off turn 2. Moves past Dijkstra, the Dutchman, relegated down to 3rd position. And Marzotto may actually lead by the end of the opening lap because he's up on the outside, has plenty of speed, and fires past Galletti to hit the front. So it's his fellow countryman Galletti in second, but it is the joint championship leader Emanuele Marzotto who is out in front. Separate battle now developing for 4th position as Philippe Stella of France tries to gain back in some lost ground on the 224 of Elia Fraccaroli, who sits in 4th position as it stands. And second place is hotting up as well because Michael Dijkstra, who currently sits well and truly embedded in that battle for 3rd in the series overall, is looking up to the outside. A bit of a lock-up coming off turn 2 from Gianluca Galletti, and the speed now is with the Dutchman. Dijkstra up to the outside line, moves through into 2nd place. Can he go back off in pursuit of Emanuele Marzotto, the race leader? A sizable margin, though, has opened between the top 2, and Dijkstra couldn't hold back Marzotto on the opening lap. Now has a lot of work to do if he wants to take his first race victory of the day. Michael Dijkstra, who has been consistent through the opening 2 rounds so far, 20 points both in the Czech Republic and in Italy, looking for a first podium finish of the season here in Morizes as he targets that bronze medal in the FIM Flattrack Cup for 2016. Looking at ease in the closing stages here, Emanuele Marzotto. He's had a good couple of looks over his shoulder just to check on the progress of Michael Dijkstra of the Netherlands, who is actually closing, but I don't think he's closing enough to really mount a serious assault as we go into the final lap. It's Marzotto still in front, riding conservative down into turn number 1. Dijkstra certainly attacking from 2nd place. There's still a good 3 bike lengths between the top 2 as they come down the back straight for the final time. And it's Marzotto who should hold the inside line going into turn number 3 just to stop that attack of Dijkstra from the Netherlands, who looks to the inside once again off the final turn, but is beaten into 2nd place. So the race victory goes the way of Emanuele Marzotto. Michael Dijkstra moving through into 2nd position at the expense of fast starter Gianluca Galletti, who eventually collects 4. Elia Fraccaroli with 3 race points behind him couldn't really gain in any ground in the latter stages, and the French wildcards have struggled so far. Anthony Caldo picking up the single point there after a failure to score for fellow French wildcard Julien Coffinier in the opening race. Philippe Stella faring the best of the Frenchmen in that one, Heat 2, as he picks up 2 race points, and Elia Gibert becoming the 2nd rider to fail to score here today. So Emanuele Marzotto and Francesco Cecchini now sit tied up front on 6 points apiece. Frank Serra and Michael Dijkstra on 5 points apiece. Gianluca Galletti with a good start there, helping himself to 4 race points as he ties in today's heat point standings with Wilfried de Lestre. Adrian Garin and Elia Fraccaroli on 3 points apiece. Massimiliano Andriotti and Philippe Stella on 2 apiece. Damien Baumet and Anthony Caldo a single point. And Elia Gibert and Julien Coffinier will look to score their first points of the day next time out in heats 3 and 4. But certainly a good ride from Emanuele Marzotto in that one, heat 2, just blasting around the outside of turns 1 and 2, making up plenty of ground, and then firing past Michael Dijkstra with his overspeed and momentum, and then pulling off a move on Gianluca Galletti to move through into the race lead. Dijkstra also passing Galletti then to get off to a good start, tied on heat points with Frank Serra, and that's where the race is for third in this championship overall. We now emerge out onto the circuit for heat number 3. Just watching Wilfred de Lestre move into his outside front row grid slot here for heat number 3. Francesco Ciccini will take his second ride of the day here, a winner first time out, of course, in the opener. Michael Dijkstra with back-to-back races, 5 points to his name, currently tied third in today's heat point standings alongside Frank Serra. Serra will feature next time out in heat number 4. So watch out for Dijkstra, who will be trying to make his way through from the back row. Didn't have such a strong start in his opening ride, and now he's in a similar position in his second outing, only this time off the second of the 2 rows. So it's Ciccini, the number 10, who goes off that gate 2 position on the front row. Watching out for the 55 of Wilfred de Lestre, who had a good first ride as well, and off the back row trying to work his way through will be the number 58 of Michael Dijkstra. Good start off gate 2 from Francesco Ciccini. A great start though off the outside from Wilfred de Lestre, who more or less took the whole shot. Ciccini though moving to block, now claims the position down the back straight. So it's Ciccini in front. We've got a real race on our hands for 4th position as Michael Dijkstra moves through up on the inside. So Dijkstra now moving up through into 4th position at the expense of the number 22 of Damien Baumet, and he's setting off in pursuit of the 74 now of Adrien Garin, who holds 3rd position as things stand. Out in front then, it's Francesco Ciccini. 2nd place is with the 55 of Wilfred de Lestre, who made a beautiful start from the outside but couldn't quite get across Ciccini, who then commanded the inside line. The race for 3rd sees the 58 diving for the inside. Through then comes Michael Dijkstra on the inside of Adrien Garin, but the Spaniard has the momentum to carry on back around the outside. Stuck to his guns there, didn't try to ride the man, stuck to his own racing line, and now Dijkstra's gone up to the outside on turn 3, but I think a little bit too far. Runs out of room there to try and make another move, and although he cuts back to the inside, Garin is doing the same, attacking the number 55 of Wilfred de Lestre, who holds 2nd place as it stands. De Lestre then moving clear, coming off turn number 2, as Dijkstra moves up the inside of the 74 Adrien Garin. So positions changing here. For 3rd, it's now Dijkstra, who's moved through off the back row and up into 3rd place and ready to mount an assault on the 55 of Wilfred de Lestre, who leaves way too much room back down into turn number 1. He's got the momentum though, the Frenchman, around the outside of turns 1 and 2 to make a repass back up into 2nd place, but it's Dijkstra who's going to have the inside line, has to back out of it. He isn't alongside, and it is de Lestre who's battling now for all he's worth to hold on to 2nd place, but he's run wide coming off turn 4, and Dijkstra didn't need a second invitation, and Garin might be about to bundle his way down the inside as well as they come into the final lap. De Lestre maintaining his run around the outside, but it's made him exposed. He's already lost 1 position because of it. Can Adrien Garin get on terms as well? He lunges for the inside going into turn number 3. De Lestre seems to have the pace though and will hold on in the run down to the checkered flag. So Wilfred de Lestre loses a position on the penultimate lap, and he's frustrated with that. He takes his hand off to make a sign of frustration as he comes over the line. But it is still 3rd position for Wilfred de Lestre, matching his points tally from heat number 1 and moving in on to 8 heat points overall. Michael Dijkstra taking the 2nd position, again a runner-up in his 2nd heat race, but this time off the back row. That was a really good effort, and Francesco Ciccini capitalising on a front row grid slot to take what in the end was a pretty straightforward race victory. Ciccini then moving on to 12 points, Dijkstra moving just behind him in the point standings on 10, and riders really looking for top 2 finishes in their heat races to try and move onto the front row for today's grand final. So it's therefore been a good start for Michael Dijkstra, getting the better of Wilfred de Lestre in the latter stages of that one. De Lestre picking up 4 and Adrien Garin with the 3 race points as he moves on to 6. So heat number 3, seeing the top riders in a similar trend and a similar position to their opening races really. Ciccini doubling his 6-point tally, Dijkstra doubling his 5-point tally. The same situation for de Lestre and Garin as well. Damien Baumet coming up with his best ride of the day so far there with 2 points in heat 3. Now moving on to Heat 4, Frank Serra among the riders here. He's due to go off the outside of the front row, and we're also watching out for Emanuele Marzotto. Marzotto, the winner of Heat number 2. This is his second appearance of the day, and particularly looking forward to seeing Heat numbers 5 and 8, where Cecchini and Marzotto will go in direct conflict. The current championship leaders on 56 championship points apiece. Frank Serra, Wilfried de Lestre and Michael Dijkstra in that battle for third in the series overall. Dijkstra's got off to a good start, with Frank Serra also scoring 5 points in his opening ride and aiming to beat that points tally with a race victory here that would send him above his championship rival in the Heat points standings. De Lestre with a strong start last time out, but he's dropping points compared to Michael Dijkstra. He's dropped 2 Heat points so far. The riders taking their time once again to get into the right starting positions. Complicated and perhaps a little bit confusing for some of these riders with a 5-rider front row, but we do now seem ready to go. And again, we're watching for the progress of Emanuele Marzotto, the number 48, in the middle of that front row. He's got off to a decent start, a bit of snaking down to the first turn, but he gets there with riders either side of him. Massimiliano Andreotti on the inside, relegated now down to third position. Frank Serra goes for the outside on turns 1 and 2 and moves through into second place. He's got the pace early on to match Marzotto, and in fact he's going to try and come all the way around the outside of the pits turn. It's Marzotto who leads at the end of the opening lap then, pursued by Serra in second place. The race is over fourth position, where Elia Fraccaroli is running wide here, coming off turns 1 and 2 and working his way through the order. Gianluca Galletti, who has an opportunity to try and make a pass here, but it's Marzotto who has a commanding advantage out in front. He's stretched a bike length now clear of Frank Serra, who sits in second place, still lunging for the inside Serra. The race still over fourth position, where again Gianluca Galletti just trying to probe around on the inside line. A fast starter in his opening ride, Galletti this time had the pole and couldn't make best use of it, but he's battling back and he's on the inside, moving Fraccaroli wide on the top turn. And I think that's a move made, a block pass on his fellow countryman to take up fourth position. He then moves very wide down the home straight just to ensure that Fraccaroli can't come back around the outside. His momentum is killed. He will try to remount an assault coming off turn number 2, but already Galletti is off in pursuit of the next position, which is currently held by another of his fellow countrymen, a fellow Italian, Massimiliano Andreotti. Andreotti holding the inside line well, and that's going to force Galletti slightly wider into turn number 1. Can he get the cut back though? Off turn 2, Galletti squaring off the turn, fires himself through up the inside of Andreotti, who's relegated down to fourth place. This is exemplary overtaking from Gianluca Galletti, who's going to gain a well and truly deserved third position here. We've still got a race up front though. Frank Serra still battling hard on the tail of Emanuele Marzotto. The Italian far from convincing so far here today. Had a bad round here last season, the reigning world number 3, but he is going to take a second consecutive race victory, although he does run wide on the final 2 turns. Serra can't quite get alongside, and it's Marzotto who makes it 2 wins out of 2. Frank Serra for a second consecutive second place, and now matches up in the Heat point standings alongside Michael Dijkstra, his main championship rival. A good third place once again from Gianluca Galletti, but this time from behind after passing Elia Fraccaroli and Massimiliano Andreotti, and that will move him on to 8 points alongside Wilfried de Lestre. So the Heat point standings so far, a very similar pattern to what we've got in the championship. Cecchini and Marzotto tie down in front on 12 points apiece. Frank Serra and Michael Dijkstra, 2 of the challengers for the bronze medal in the FIM Flattrack Cup. Well, they're tied on 10 points apiece at the moment in the heats. Gianluca Galletti and Wilfried de Lestre on 8 apiece, and Adrien Garin also up there with the top performers. He sits on 6 after his first 2 rides. Another win there for Marzotto, but as I said during that race, not entirely convincing. In his opening ride, Michael Dijkstra was gaining ground in the latter stages, and in that one it was Frank Serra harassing him throughout, looking up to the inside line coming off the final turn, but not quite close enough, having already had to work his way through the field. So Marzotto it is who makes it 2 wins out of 2, but perhaps he's saving his best performances for his remaining 3 rides, where he'll meet Francesco Cecchini in each. At the halfway mark now in the heats, and already the points trends have started to become clear. The double-figure scorers after the opening 2 races will be certain of their place in the final, but the next 4 heat races will determine which position on the grid they will take, and will also decide those places in the lower order of the field, where the bottom 5 riders are separated by just 3 points, covering those last qualification positions. Out onto track for Heat 5, and this will be the first time that Francesco Cecchini and Emanuele Marzotto will meet. They'll meet again in heat number 8, and then, of course, in the final as well. Now, the lineup for this one, heat number 5, will also see Wilfried de Lestre on the front row. He made a competitive start last time he had a front row grid slot. So we have 3 riders here on the front row who should be highly competitive. And watch out also for Michael Dijkstra. He's in the unfortunate position of having twice to come off the back row of the grid, and that leaves him in a very unfavourable position in the heat draw. But he has already made progress in each of his 2 rides so far after making far from impressive starts. So let's see what he can do in this one, heat number 5. Watch out then for the 48 of Marzotto going off gate number 2, the 55 of de Lestre off gate 3, and off the outside of that front row, can Francesco Cecchini get all the way across from the outside? Heat number 5, and the most eagerly anticipated of these races so far. Bit of a squirrely start from Cecchini, but far from a great one from Marzotto either. De Lestre had made a half-decent break, but had got pushed aside and squashed between the 2 championship favourites who blast clear. Separate race on for 4th position at the moment. Around the outside comes Michael Dijkstra challenging here for that 4th place, and he's got it. Coming off turn number 4, a fairly easy pass in the end on the 22 of Damien Beaumet, and Beaumet actually now going backwards as he loses another place to Elia Fraccaroli, who's now up into that position. Cut back off turn 2 as diving down the inside is the 55, so repaying the compliment Wilfried de Lestre, but he's under a lot of pressure from Michael Dijkstra, who's going to make the cut back off turn number 4. De Lestre once again with a fast start, but moving backwards through the field. He'll be frustrated at that, just as he was at losing a position in the latter stages of his last ride. Still competitive though. De Lestre looking back up the inside coming off turn number 2. He doesn't quite seem to have the outright pace though of Michael Dijkstra, who's got that position now, 3rd place sewn up, having moved his way through from the back row of the grid for the 2nd time here today so far. I don't think he's going to be able to catch up to the top 2, but 3rd position now looks consolidated for the Dutch representative, the lone Dutchman in the field here today, Michael Dijkstra. Still coming under some pressure though from the 55 of Wilfried de Lestre. The Frenchman will be antagonised by the fact that he's lost that place and now seems to have the pace to keep up with the rider who's just overtaken him. Struggles further down the order. Battle for 6th position still ongoing between Damien Beaumet, who seems to be dropping backwards through the field in this one, and Philippe Stella coming on strong in the closing stages of this one, heat number 5. The race is out front, and then for 3rd as well as that minor positions battle as we go into the final lap. The race for 6th as close as it's been so far, and Beaumet losing out here to Philippe Stella. So the 2 Frenchmen battling over the minor positions. We've got de Lestre, their fellow countryman, further up through the field, but he's dropped behind Michael Dijkstra. But there's no doubt about the race winner here is going to be Francesco Cecchini, who gets the better of Emanuele Marzotto in the pair's first meeting here today. 3rd place going the way of Michael Dijkstra. 4th position to Wilfried de Lestre, Elia Fraccaroli, Philippe Stella and Damien Beaumet completing the finishers in race number 5. Well, the race out front was decided fairly early on. Marzotto tried to claim the inside ground, but Cecchini battled back to take up the race lead. Then it was about the race for 3rd position, with Michael Dijkstra coming through at the expense of Wilfried de Lestre. The Frenchman battling back for a while, but that's his worst point scoring position of the day so far, as he collects 3 race points from that one, heat number 5. Elia Fraccaroli with another 2-point score to move on to 7. Philippe Stella keeps bubbling away in and around the qualification positions. He moves on to 4 at the expense of Damien Beaumet, who fails to score. Now, he won't add to his 3-point tally in that one, heat number 5, and that could leave him under pressure because 3 of the riders behind him in the point standings meet next time out in heat number 6, and heat 6 is definitely the weaker on paper of these round 3 heat races. Cecchini and Marzotto really boosting the strength of that last one out, heat number 5. Frank Serra and Gianluca Galletti will be the favourites for this one, heat 6, and a real opportunity for both of them to try and move above Michael Dijkstra in the point standing. Serra and Dijkstra were tied after 2 completed races. Dijkstra, the Dutchman, scoring 4 points last time out, and Serra therefore only needs a top 2 finish in this one, heat 6, to move above him in the point standings. Galletti likewise is on 8, so he could, with a race victory, move level now with Michael Dijkstra. Turning away from the start line is the number 47, Massimiliano Andriotti, just moving into his correct starting position on the inside of the back row. The riders we're watching out for then, the 74 off the inside of the front row, Adrien Garin. Also Galetti off gate 3 on the front row, and Serra alongside him, the number 8, as we get underway. A fast start from the number 8, who is going to take the whole shot. So Frank Serra is the first away. He's pursued in second position by Elia Gibert, who's got off to a great start after failing to score in her opening 2 rides, now losing second position as down the inside comes Gianluca Galetti. So Galetti now up into second pace and off to pursue the leader, Frank Serra. It's Serra from Galetti. Third position with Gibert, a non-scoring rider so far, with a great opportunity to pick up a major points haul and bring herself back into contention for a place in today's grand final. But riders going either side here. The 47 of Massimiliano Andriotti down the inside, and around the outside of the pair of them, Adrien Garin, who got off to a poor start off gate 4 on the front row, but has now worked his way through the field, and 2 places in one go there. Certainly made a lot of progress all in one move. Elia Gibert then still on for a first point-scoring ride of the day at the expense of the 2 French wildcards, Anthony Caldo and Julien Coffinier, who are out at the back and have got a lot of work to do to make up ground actually on Gibert. Gibert beaten in both of her rides so far by Anthony Caldo, but looks set to get revenge in this one. And remember, with 2 riders set to bow out in the point standings, Caldo, Gibert and Coffinier are very much in that squabble at the moment, along with Damien Beaumet, who failed to score last time out in race number 5. No further progress really being made by Adrien Garin on the tail of Gianluca Galetti, who looks set for second position, and behind Frank Serra, the race leader, a comfortable race leader who looks set to become only the 3rd different race winner of the day here in heat number 6. And that brought about by the fact that Cecchini and Marzotto met one another last time out in race number 5. It's Frank Serra then who leads them into the final lap. Second place still with Gianluca Galetti, 3rd position with Adrien Garin. Massimiliano Andriotti hasn't really had an answer to Garin, who sprinted clear up in 3rd place, and Galetti has held off Garin's challenge well. He's going to take the 5 race points here, so Galetti will move on to 13. The 4 points for Garin will move him on to a double-figure score and guaranteed a place in the final. But it's Frank Serra who takes her first race victory of the day. Just 2 drop points from 3 rides so far. Serra very much in contention for a front row grid slot in today's final. Now sits just 2 points behind the meeting leader Francesco Cecchini, and only 1 point behind Emanuele Marzotto, and very much in contention for a great grid slot for today's grand final. Serra then making his way back to the pits after a one-wheeled celebration down the back straight. The 6 race points moving him on to 16. Second place going the way of Gianluca Galetti, with an early challenge there, beating Adrien Garin, and Massimiliano Andriotti collecting the 3 points. It was Elia Gibert who made the fast start, but down the back straight overhauled on a couple of occasions, and Garin and Andriotti going either side, Garin making 2 positions up in one go. So after 3 completed rounds of heat races, the top 3 in the point standings with 1 ride each remaining, Francesco Cecchini, Emanuele Marzotto and Frank Serra separated by just 2 race points. Frank Serra with the first race victory last time out, moving on to 16. Emanuele Marzotto with his first defeat of the day at the hands of championship challenger Francesco Cecchini sits on 17, with Cecchini out in front on 18. Separate battle then at the moment in the point standings. Michael Dijkstra sitting on 14, just 1 ahead of Gianluca Galetti, who's been a surprise package here today. Wilfred de Lestra on home turf, not quite able to live up to the top 5 in the standings, but he sits on 11 and ahead of Adrien Garin, despite losing a point to the Spaniard with his good performance last time out in Heat 6. Massimiliano Andriotti, Elia Fraccaroli, Damien Beaumet, Philippe Stella and Anthony Caldo currently sit inside the qualification positions, but Beaumet and Caldo both sit just a point ahead of Elia Gibert, who scored her first points of the day last time out in race number 6, and now sits well and truly in contention for a place in today's final. Julien Coffinier yet to get off the mark, and he goes next time out in heat number 7, looking for his first points of the event. now out onto track for Heat 7, and a top 3 finish in this one for either Frank Serra or Michael Dijkstra will guarantee them a place in the top 5 and on that front row for today's grand final. Serra sitting third in the point standings, looking for back-to-back race victories as he has 2 rides in succession here. And the 2 top performers in the meeting so far, Francesco Cecchini and Emanuele Marzotto, meet next time out in Heat 8. So there's a very real possibility that if those 2 take points off one another next time out, Frank Serra could make further progress in the standings overall with a race victory in this one, Heat number 7. But Serra has to go off the back row of the grid as he has that 6th starting position, and off the front row of the grid here we'll have the 58 of Michael Dijkstra, who's had 2 back row grid slots in succession and will now be looking to make that front row grid slot pay dividends as he goes off the middle starting position on the front row. Watch out for Gianluca Galletti, who goes off the very outside here, and the 74 on the inside of him of Adrian Garin of gate 2. We're underway then with Heat 7. Garin has made the fastest start. Galletti, though, bursting all the way around the outside to pick up the race lead. And Dijkstra's now off in pursuit, up in 2nd place. So it all went wrong, really, for the 74 of Adrian Garin, who just didn't get away around turns 1 and 2 and has now dropped back down to 3rd position. Under pressure from Wilfried de Lestre, who's up into 4th place. The Frenchman looking for the outside run on the top turn. Diving down the inside now, it's Frank Serra, only now starting to make progress from the back row. De Lestre and Serra both coming from that back row and working their way through the field together. They're up in 4th and 5th positions. Leading the way then, it's Gianluca Galletti, but he's under pressure as around the outside tries to come Michael Dijkstra. Looking again to the outside line on turns 1 and 2, the Dutchman, but Galletti is again equal to it. Could it be a first race victory of the day for Gianluca Galletti? Diving down the inside, losing his left foot as he came into turn number 3. Dijkstra desperately trying to find a way through because he is clearly being held back by Galletti, and that's enabling the 74 of Adrian Garin to get back on terms. And Frank Serra, the number 8, isn't too far behind the front 3 either as the pack closes up here in race number 7. Again thinking about a move down the inside, Michael Dijkstra, but he backs out of it at the last moment, runs up wide on turn 3 instead. He's going to go for the cut back off the pits turn once again, but Galletti is equal to it. Galletti riding very defensively here and just about holding on to this position. Again looking up wider on turns 1 and 2. Michael Dijkstra, he's going to make a lunge this time into turn 3. Is he going to run too wide here on the top turn? It looks as though he's got it turned in time, and that's brilliant from Michael Dijkstra. He weighed up that move on a couple of occasions and then eventually went for it on the penultimate lap. We're now into the last lap, and Frank Serra is challenging around the outside, and Galletti is going to lose 2 positions in 2 laps. Has Serra got enough time to get on terms with Michael Dijkstra, the race leader? He's going to run wider into turn number 3. He gets it sliding, but I don't think he's going to get there in time, and Dijkstra holds on for the checkered flag. Michael Dijkstra then wins in heat number 7. 2nd place over the line for Frank Serra. 3rd going to Gianluca Galletti, but losing 2 places on the last 2 laps there as he's denied what looked set to be a first race victory of the day. Brilliant defensive riding from Galletti throughout, but he just loses ground in the latter stages and didn't have the outright pace to keep up with the top 2. Adrian Garin held at bay despite his efforts to join his fellow countryman Frank Serra in the top 3 positions in the closing stages, and Garin picking up 3 race points for his efforts in that one. That's the worst performance of the day so far for Wilfried de Lestre, who collects just 2, and that should see him off the front row of the grid, I suspect, in today's grand final. So frustrations for Wilfried de Lestre, who is relegated down the order. Couldn't make up progress off the back row of the grid, but he does nonetheless get the better of Philippe Stella, and Julien Coffinier is the first rider eliminated from today's event.
1 point to number 18, Philippe Stella.
So Frank Serra is the new points leader on 21 and ahead of Michael Dijkstra, but it looks likely that both Francesco Cecchini and Emanuele Marzotto will move above those points tallies. They sit on 18 and 17 points apiece, so with 3 or 4 from this one, which in itself seems unlikely. You suspect that Cecchini and Marzotto will finish in the top 2 positions here. That would be enough for them to move above Serra and Dijkstra in the points. Also watching out for a battle in the lower order of the standings. Elia Jabert, after scoring 2 points last time out in heat 6, will be looking to get the better of either Anthony Caldo or Damien Beaumay, who both sit on 3, to take the last of the qualification positions. Here we go then, Gibert will have a front row grid slot off gate number 2. On the inside of her, it's the number 47 of Massimiliano Andreotti. The favourites are the number 10 of Francesco Cecchini and Emanuele Marzotto, the 48, who start off gates 3 and 5 respectively. Marzotto has made the faster start, so Emanuele Marzotto, who was beaten by Francesco Cecchini last time out, has taken the whole shot and leads Cecchini around turns 1 and 2. Race for 4th position, changing further down the order, but up front it's Marzotto who leads. Cecchini though looking for the cutback off turn number 4, close racing for top spot, but it's Marzotto who leads at the end of the opening lap, still pursued by Francesco Cecchini. The race for 4th position briefly sees the number 46 of Anthony Caldo holding the place. Looking up to the inside though now, it's Damien Beaumet. Good race further down the order. Where is Elia Gibert in the mix? Well, right at the back as it stands, and that's not good enough for her to progress through, as she has dropped back some distance now from the 3 riders up ahead and out of contention as it stands for a place in the final. Still the race ongoing with the number 22 of Damien Beaumet again diving for the inside on the 46 of Anthony Caldo, and just keeping in pursuit of those two around the outside, Elia Fraccaroli further down. No change up front then, it's still the number 48 of Emanuele Marzotto who leads, and still Francesco Cecchini who seems to have the pace advantage. Drops back slightly though around turns 1 and 2. He's going to look for the cutback off the second bend to gain back in lost ground. He's dropped a few bike lengths there around the top turn, but again on the pits bend, Cecchini reeling back in Emanuele Marzotto. Will we have another fascinating encounter like this one in the final? Because Cecchini at the moment is being bested by Marzotto, who's been the faster from the starts, probably been the fastest rider of the day from the starts, but he's going to lose the position here down the back straight, and Cecchini's got it turned in time as he takes up the leading position. Well, it's going to be a second consecutive defeat inflicted on Emanuele Marzotto, but these two will move through to the final as the top 2 scorers, and if Marzotto can make the start again in the final, he's got to work harder on defending against Cecchini, who's been brilliant to pass him in this one, heat number 8, and it's going to be Francesco Cecchini who will take a 4th consecutive race victory and move one step closer to a 3rd successive title in the FIM Flattrack Cup. Cecchini takes the win, then Marzotto over the line for 2nd. 3rd eventually after a big gap behind the top 2, Massimiliano Andreotti, who gets the better of Elia Fraccaroli, who had to pass both Damien Beaumet and Anthony Caldo for the 3 race points, and Elia Gibert is the 2nd rider eliminated alongside French wildcard Julien Coffinier, as Anthony Caldo, by scoring the single point in that one, becomes the last of the qualifiers. Delight for Francesco Cecchini, who had to do it the hard way and has also taken a psychological advantage over championship rival Emanuele Marzotto ahead of today's final. He goes in as the top scorer. He'll have first choice of starting position. 24 heat points for Francesco Cecchini, who had to do it, as I said, the hard way in that one with a cutback off turn number 2, drilling a move down the inside, Francesco Cecchini to take up the race lead. A brilliant race win then in heat number 8, and some good fighting there from Marzotto, who tried to defend but comes up short. 24 heat points then for Cecchini, 22 for Marzotto, but they're tied in the championship standings ahead of the all-important final, which is where the championship points will be awarded here tonight. Your top 5 qualifiers then: Francesco Cecchini, Emanuele Marzotto, Frank Serra, Michael Dijkstra and Gianluca Galletti. The next 5 qualifiers: Wilfried de Lestre, Adrien Garin, Massimiliano Andreotti, Elia Fraccaroli is back. We'll have the 2 riders, Philippe Stella and Anthony Caldo, the 2 French representatives, who were just headed by Damien Beaumet in the heat point standings. So the heat points have decided seeding order for gate choice positions for the final, but other than that have little relevance from here on in. We need to look back at the championship points with Francesco Cecchini and Emanuele Marzotto tied down in front with 56. Frank Serra and Wilfried de Lestre behind on 41 in the race for the bronze medal. Michael Dijkstra also in contention. He will go off the front row. The rider who's really up against it now is Wilfried de Lestre, because he hasn't made it onto the front row. He's off gate 2 on the middle row. Across the front row then, the favourites here, Galletti off 1, off gate number 2 alongside him Dijkstra. Gate 3 it's Frank Serra, The two top scorers in the heat stages have gone for the two outside start positions. We've got the 48 of Emanuele Marzotto off gate 4 and Francesco Cecchini off gate 5. Riders to watch out for from the middle row, Wilfred de Lestre, the 55, and the 74 of Adrien Garin, who've both had mixed days so far. The starting marshal has them ready and walks away. We can then get underway with the grand final. This is where the championship points will be awarded and where the 2016 FIM Flattrack Cup will be decided. Fast starts from two of the riders on the inside, and it's up to Francesco Cecchini to cut his way through from 4th to 2nd coming off turn 2. Marzotto making progress. He's down the inside. He connects with the side of Cecchini. You can tell that the championship is on the line in this one, and we've lost the rider further back down the order as well. But it's Marzotto who's made the progress in the early stages. He's up into 2nd place, and he's ahead of championship rival. Crucially, Francesco Cecchini is down in only 3rd position, and he's got to make up ground as we have a race stoppage here in the grand final. The red flags come out to stop the race with a rider down on the outside of turn number 3, and it looks to me as though that's Elia Fraccaroli who's gone down on the opening lap and forced the stoppage of this one, the grand final. So it's going to be a second time of asking, but that had worked out perfectly for Emanuele Marzotto, who'd got down the inside and very forcefully, it must be said, past Francesco Cecchini on turn number 3 on the opening lap. He'd got it wrong on the opening 2 turns. Cecchini had gone for the cutback. Marzotto had tried to go all the way around the outside, then diving back down for the inside. Marzotto just thundered straight into the side of Cecchini and moved him out of the way before moving on to challenge for the race lead. But just as he was about to pounce for first position, the race was stopped. Elia Fraccaroli further down the order, having gone down on turn number 3. And I can confirm that Fraccaroli has been kicked out of this one, much to his own displeasure, and he certainly doesn't agree with that decision. But we will be going again without the disqualified Elia Fraccaroli, and with 11 riders only now to contest the final of this round 3 of the 2016 FIM Flattrack Cup here in Morizes. Well, did the top two in the point standings get it wrong going for the outside 2 start positions? Because 3 riders on the inside of them and 2 of them got down to turn 1 ahead of them in the initial staging. We're going to go again anyway, so the advantage that was held at the time of the stoppage by Emanuele Marzotto is going to be eroded here, and he's got to try and do the same thing again against Francesco Cecchini. He might try and go for the inside this time coming off turn 2, because that's where Cecchini picked up the race lead, coming off the second bend, only for Marzotto to thunder back through down into the pits turn. Second time of asking then. We're 1 rider down, of course, after the disqualification of Elia Fraccaroli as the cause of the stoppage in the first running of this, the grand final. Hopefully the second and final running of the last race of the season in the 2016 FIM Flattrack Cup. The riders waiting for the tapes to rise, and we're underway. Squirrely starts off the 2 outside start positions, and they're 4 abreast down into turns 1 and 2. Marzotto gets there ahead of Cecchini, who's going to cut his way between the traffic, clips the side of Marzotto as he comes through into the race lead, and Marzotto is now stuck on the outside line of Frank Serra, but he's going to try and make dividends nonetheless. He cuts across Serra coming off turn number 4. Serra's momentum is killed, and that gives the run to Michael Dijkstra, who's going to move through into 3rd place, and this could be crucial in the battle for the last step of the championship podium, with Frank Serra needing to work his way back past Dijkstra now. Likewise up front, Marzotto's got to get the better of the number 10, Francesco Cecchini, and the current race leader. There's little more than a bike's length between the top 2, but they're pulling out a margin now over Michael Dijkstra, who sits in 3rd place. Running wide on turns 1 and 2, Marzotto looking for something extra, but instead it's the race leader who's been enabled to pull away. And could this be exactly the buffer that the number 10 needs to go off now and win this one, the grand final, which would also give him the Flattrack Cup? As things stand then, the race leader would also be the champion, Francesco Cecchini, bidding for a 3rd consecutive title, yet to be defeated in the FIM Flattrack Cup in the series overall. He lost out in round number 2 to Emanuele Marzotto, his fellow countryman, but he's going to fight back at the final round here in France. It's still close up front. It's a 10-lap final, remember, so extra laps for the riders to try and make progress. Talking of progress, the number 47 trying to get through here, Massimiliano Andriotti, challenging on the inside of Gianluca Galletti. At the moment, the 2 Italians packed down in the middle order behind the race for 3rd place between Frank Serra and Michael Dijkstra. It's not been a perfect day for the number 55 of Wilfred de Lestre, but he's ahead of that race at the moment between Andriotti and Galletti. Galetti, having missed the opening round of the season, was never really in contention for a top position in terms of the championship overall, but he's been a spoiler so far here today. As we look at the race for third position, still held at the moment by the number 58 of Michael Dijkstra. Under pressure though in the latter stages from Frank Serra, and if Serra can find his way past, that will be enough for third in the championship overall. He only sits 1 point clear of Michael Dijkstra, who at the moment is getting the better of him. The Dutchman though is going to run harder into turn 3. Serra's going to get it turned on the inside line, moves Dijkstra out wide and comes through. Crucial in the race for the bronze medal and the final step on the podium of this 2016 FIM Flattrack Cup. Back down the inside again comes Michael Dijkstra. These two were separated by just a point in the heat standings, by just a point in the championship standings as well coming into today's event, and now on the track by the smallest of margins. It's Frank Serra who has the advantage though, and now that he's got the better of Michael Dijkstra, he's started to pull clear, just as we've seen out in front from Cecchini, who's had the pace advantage over Marzotto all day, and now that he's taken the lead, is able to just blitz his rival by pulling away out in front. It's Cecchini then who heads into the final lap, bidding for a third consecutive title in the FIM Flattrack Cup, and well on his way towards securing it. Unbeaten during the heat stages, beaten in the early stages of the initial running of this grand final, but he's got his revenge in the rerun, and it's going to be Francesco Cecchini with 5 wins out of 5 in here in Morizes, who takes the 2016 FIM Flattrack Cup. He's delighted with that result as he gets the better of Emanuele Marzotto. It was honours even coming into the final round, but Cecchini has dominated here in Morizes, and the delight and the emotion seems to be overwhelming for the number 10, who is going to convert himself into number 1 once again in 2016. Celebrations on one wheel down the back straight from Francesco Cecchini, the winner of the final round of the season, the winner of the opening round as well, and by the smallest possible margin over Emanuele Marzotto. It's going to be 4 points in the championship in the final reckoning, but just one position decided those 4 points, with Marzotto missing out and taking the second step on the podium both here tonight and in the point standings overall. So it's Francesco Cecchini who receives the congratulations from all around him. Gianluca Galetti there congratulating him on his way back down to turn number 3. And it's now going to be time for celebrations with the team. And it looks as though they've got the number 1 board already prepared for Francesco Cecchini, the 2016 winner of the FIM Flattrack Cup. He breaks down on the circuit, congratulated by all of those around him as he becomes the champion once again. Well, Cecchini was the dominant force during the heat stages. It would have been unfortunate for him to then miss out in the final, but he didn't, and at the second time of asking, Marzotto just got beaten up. He went for the outside run again around turns 1 and 2, just as he had in the initial running, and it was Cecchini who cut between traffic. He was 4th at one stage around bend 1, but he cut up the inside of Marzotto, moved across the block. Marzotto was then sent off the line he wanted. He wanted to be down the inside going into turn number 3, and instead it was Cecchini who was able to command that racing line, and Marzotto, who was relegated back into 3rd position at one stage, then fighting back around the outside into 2nd. Frank Serra fighting his way back through as well, and that's the other race that was ongoing in that grand final here today. Frank Serra eventually getting the better of Michael Dijkstra and of Wilfried de Lestre as well, as he will take the final step on the podium here tonight. Normally there would be 2 podium celebrations, one for round 3 of this 2016 FIM Flattrack Cup and another for the overall series podium, but they are identical here this evening. Frank Serra taking 3rd position both here tonight and in the championship standings overall. 2nd place both here this evening, and the runner-up position and silver medal in the FIM Flattrack Cup going the way of Emanuele Marzotto, who's next up to receive his award, and comes quite literally with Francesco Cecchini, tonight's winner and the championship winner overall. Both seem very satisfied with their efforts here this evening. Marzotto taking the runner-up position in high spirits as he gets the better of Frank Serra. 2 third-place finishes for Serra, giving him that podium finish overall. And Michael Dijkstra, despite his consistency through this 2016 season, missing out by 3 points in the end after being overhauled by Serra during the final here tonight. So it's Frank Serra of Spain, Emanuele Marzotto of Italy and Francesco Cecchini, also of Italy, who receive their trophies for their efforts here this evening and will shortly receive their FIM medals as well. Michael Dijkstra and Wilfried de Lestre both missing out by less than 5 points in the end, so disappointments for them. But we came into tonight knowing we had two battles on our hands, one for the overall winner between Cecchini and Marzotto, and it was Cecchini who came out on top there, and a three-way tussle between Serra, Dijkstra and de Lestre for the bronze medal, which is now being received by Frank Serra, who had to work very hard for that. He had to make up lost ground after finishing down the order in the opening event of the campaign in the Czech Republic. He battled back with third in Italy and has rounded off the campaign well in France as he finishes on 65 championship points. But there's only one winner, and it's Francesco Cecchini for a third consecutive season who takes the top spot in the FIM Flattrack Cup.